how concerned are you about anti-Semitism in France right now? Is it something you think about?
Yeah, I think about it so much that I left.
My guest today is Amanda Sthers, the award-winning French author, playwright, and filmmaker. Much of her critically acclaimed work looks at Jewish life and culture with her play,
Le Vieux Juif Blonde.
Thank you, my French is not good enough, and even being studied at Harvard University. Amanda, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
So, look, first of all, thank you very much for being here. Now, not all Jewish artists choose to feature their Jewish identity in their works, but some, including yourself, do. And I was wondering, do you consciously include Jewish themes and characters in your work, or is it just natural for you?
Well, it wasn't the plan when I started writing. I didn't tell myself I'm gonna speak about my Judaism. But at the same time, I'm not someone that's very religious. A lot of people were asking me, why do you speak about it that much? And I was saying it's more that I feel that I don't really have the choice. I feel that I almost discovered that I was Jewish through insults at school. You know, it was like, is it that important? And I realized that even if you choose not to be Jewish, you are. I mean, it's part of your identity. And I feel it's kind of at the same time, a luck and a burden, and something you have to carry through. And I wanted to understand, why is it such a big deal to a lot of people? It's like something very specific that helps you understand humanity in a way. And so that came into my work quite naturally, because it was such a rich matter and subject, and I guess it's really part of my identity. I think, like, even a lot of Black writers, for example, they don't want to speak about the color of their skin, but like slowly they feel that they don't have a choice. There's something here that you have to explore and understand.
Yeah. You said that you sort of, in a way, kind of figured out parts of your identity through insults at school. What sort of things were they saying?
Well, at the time, it was kind of I would say, the old version of French antisemitism. It was, I remember a kid that told me, and it's funny when you look at me, like how much I look Jewish and how my nose was Jewish, like things that are from like far right ideas, you know, like those teams from World War II. And I was blonder than him with blue eyes and a very small nose. So it was kind of funny in a way. If I wasn't that scared because he was really tall and scary, uh, I would have laughed, and I laughed about it like years after. But at the time, I realized how subjective it was, and how there were like those anti-Semitic ideas that were almost like a brainwash. People think that Jews are richer, for example, like those type of silly ideas that people carry. And the fact that I was Jewish, he saw all of a sudden my nose bigger. I think everything changed, and yeah, I mean, the only thing we really the only thing we really learn to do when you're Jewish is to laugh about those matters quite early.
It's very Jewish to use humor as some sort of coping mechanism to get through it. And I got to ask you, what is the key, in your opinion, to writing good Jewish characters?
Well, I mean, on my side, I have no. I just have to look at my family, but it's I think good Jewish characters are people that are always between laughters and tears. It's quite close to what I would say Italian cinema used a lot, like when they were exploring uh, neorealism at the time. The characters were very, at the same time, there was a sense of nostalgia. There was a sense of humor, like throughout very hard times. And I think this is typical of Jewish creation, the fact that nothing is serious and everything is dramatic at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It's about finding that right balance, right?
Yeah, probably, or exaggerating the fact that there's no balance sometimes, and that creates it, because that, like, exaggerating drama creates humor, exaggerating humor creates drama. So there's something about like pushing the button a bit, like higher when it's a Jewish character.
Yeah. Were there any Jewish humorists or filmmakers you sort of took inspiration from?
I didn't take like inspiration, but they inspired me because I think I watched all of it. So I think writers, I would say Isaac Bashevis Singer, or as a filmmaker, Woody Allen. Of course, like, it's things that are part of my identity because I've watched so much of it. But yeah.
Mm, yeah. Now, some Jewish artists have spoken out about anti-Semitism, and when they do this, sometimes they have received anti-Semitism simply for speaking out. What do you think Jewish artists should do in this situation?
I mean, I wrote a book about Afghanistan when I was 26. And at the time, I started receiving threats and terrible letters, like full of antisemitism. It was about the two last Jews of Kabul. It was called Chicken Street, which is the name of the main street of Kabul. And I remember feeling that now I had no other choice than to continue. I felt it didn't make me, like, it didn't silence me. Quite the opposite. I felt like, oh, so it's relevant. The fact that I write about this is important. I mean, it's really strange because as an artist we are supposed to be entertainer, but at the same time we are also responsible for the circulation of ideas and thought, and maybe um, even if it's changed for one reader, we can re-explain the word through another pair of eyes. So I feel that I, it's kind of our responsibility. But I'm the mother of two sons, so I was afraid for a long time. I was afraid when I was living in France to just mention it, because you always think like it's not a big deal, it's gonna pass, it's okay. And also you don't want to think that people think you find yourself excuses for anything. And I think I felt the same thing as a woman sometimes. uh like I was feeling that I didn't get some jobs because I was a woman, but it was hard for me to express it because I would look like an hysterical person, or like fall into cliche. And I think that now in my career I've done enough to be able to say it without people suspecting that it's my excuse. I've done enough things to say it wasn't easy all the time. um, and I think it's important to mention it for the coming generations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, regular listeners of the podcast will know that a recurring theme appears to be guests saying that their anti Semitic experiences have not silenced them. Quite the opposite. They have has only emboldened them to continue speaking out. And that seems to be exactly what happened with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was never like the main part of my speech, of my career, of what I was saying. But at the same time, it's funny because a lot of time when I'm doing an interview in France, they ask a question saying, as a Jewish person, what do you think of that or this? And I'm just thinking, why don't you ask the question saying as like a French citizen? I think it's really strange that we are always like labeled as Jewish. I don't think they would ask any other people on a TV show as a Muslim, what do you think about that? Or as a Catholic person, what do you think about it? And I think I think it's really something like that I have to carry, and there's no choice, and I have to speak about it because it says something that is very symptomatic about a country more than it says about Judaism. I always feel that every time there's a very strong increase of anti-Semitic incidents, democracy is in danger. Uh, and it always was verified throughout history, you know?
Yeah, I mean, France has a long history of anti-Semitism, and in recent years we have seen a significant rise in anti-Semitism in the country, including an increasing number of murders of Jewish people. The most recent reported murder was that of Eyal Haddad. How concerned are you about anti-Semitism in France right now? Is it something you think about?
Yeah, I think about it so much that I left. I mean, I left 7 years ago. I live in LA now, and I have a hard time feeling at home in France anymore. And it's very heartbreaking because, as you can hear, I'm very French, and I mean, I write in French. It's my language. I was born in Paris. It's really hard for me because I can feel uh, in the air that there's something really hateful, and it's not like the far right ideas. It's like more like new. There's still far right ideas, but it's more like new conspiracy theories, themes, and like uh, contemporary forms of anti-Semitism. I would say like the rejection of Israel or Islamist ideas that are spreading. Like I think the worst thing that happened in France was the murder of this teacher Samuel Paty a year ago. He was beheaded because he said in his classroom he was trying to speak about Charlie Hebdo and what happened with the caricature, and he was trying to like an open-minded speech to his class. And anyway, like I'm just saying that France is not a safe place for Jewish people anymore, and I don't understand how the government doesn't want to say more about it. Like probably because of course like there's much more people voting on on the other side, but I think they are putting the entire nation in danger by not uh, trying to keep Jews safe in their country. And I'm saying in their country, I still have a passport, but I just don't feel that it's my country anymore.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, you left France to go to LA because of anti-Semitism. What is the differences? What differences have you noticed between France and the States in how anti-Semitism is treated and how Jews as a people are viewed?
Well, I remember that it wasn't um, a question to that you had to avoid. For example, I remember like the first time they told me, "Oh, are you Jewish?" It was not the same tone that was used in France, and it was like, yeah, it's something that you can be Jewish, you can be whatever you want. I think the thing is that in an in a strange way, capitalism is so important to them that there's like first the flag, and you all just can be whatever you want if you feel American, if you're here with the American values. Lately, it's changing, and I think like pandemic increased a lot of anti-Semitic incidents, increased a lot of paranoia. Like every time there's a crisis, anti-Semitism like um, is increasing. But like now, what is like Trump also kind of unleashed some people who feel now allowed to say horrible things. And Kanye West lately, I mean, it's not
Yes.
heaven in the States either, but I
Yeah.
just say that I see people walking uh, in the street with a kippah without being worried. I see kids wearing Magen David without being worried. And I remember at the time in Paris, I was always telling my sons, just don't mention your bar mitzvah when we are in a taxi. Just be careful. Don't just stay low profile, because I was afraid for them. I never felt that here.
Mm. Well, I remember going to France on a school trip. I'm from the UK, and I went to a Jewish school, and it was school uniform. We had to wear a kippah. And when we went to France, we went to Strasbourg, they said, take it off. Do not wear it. And that was a really big shock because we would always wear it. So I was like, what's going on? And now I understand more. It's really quite alarming, and certainly in recent years with the increased violence. What do you think needs to change?
Well, it's all starts with education, I think. And I mean, for years and years, some far right ideas were responsible, but it's not true at all anymore. And it's been years that it's like the lefties, like the newspapers that were supposed to be very open-minded and more like socialist and very objective, are not for a while regarding Israel. I mean, I know that at a certain point, some teachers were afraid to mention the Shoah in the classrooms in France, and were not mentioning it in the history class, and it like kind of just disappeared because it was dangerous to speak about it. And so it all starts with the roots. It all starts with education.
Mm. You mentioned how important education is, and of course we completely agree. A big part of campaign against anti-Semitism's mission is education and outreach. And I feel like you educate through your films, and your 2017 film Holy Lands, featuring the legendary Jewish actor James Caan, based on a book also written by you, tells the story of a Jewish man who leaves his life as a New York doctor behind to move to Israel to become a pig farmer. What inspired the story?
Actually, I was reading an article saying that there were pig farmers in Israel. And I remember I was on a train and I was laughing out loud, thinking, "My God, that's like such a good story." And I started doing research on how do you raise pigs in Israel, and you have to put them on stilts so they don't touch the Holy Lands. And I was thinking, but who is buying pigs in Israel? And then I realized that it was such in fashion in Tel Aviv to eat bacon, and like all of those contradictions that are so strong for a comedy. And slowly the comedy turned also into drama, into a movie about a dysfunctional family. And I think it's more a movie about everyone's limit of tolerance. We all think we are open minded, and then there's a limit to it, to every one of us, myself included. So I think it's a way to, Oliland was a way to ask questions. And also I thought it was quite funny that all of a sudden like rabbis and imams were agreeing against pigs, you know. Like
Yeah.
this is not something we want in our country. So there's always like a way to, I think, redefine things and move a speech to another level to make us ask questions about ourselves. Like if imams and rabbis suddenly agrees against pigs, then like what are the pigs' rights, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a film with a lot of heart. What was it like making this film? What was the experience like?
I must say it was quite hard. and I didn't really like working in Israel. So you see, I'm also criticizing some things. It was quite hard. I mean, Israeli people are tough, but also I think they were like having a woman direct was kind of complicated for them. It wasn't, yeah, it was kind of tough, and also the only way for them to understand authority, authority was for me to shout from morning to night, and this is not the way I work. I mostly try to have people very involved. I'm very friendly with my crew. This is never the way I was used to work, and I've worked in several countries, so it was the first time I had to go through this, and it made me quite miserable. And I mean, my thanks God, I had part of my French crew that was used to work with me, so it was easier. But like the Israeli crew, like was complicated to deal with, honestly.
Yeah, that sounds tough.
But then it was magical on another, like on the locations, on what I was trying to tell. There was like I could feel an understanding, but it wasn't my best experience as a director.
Yeah, yeah. This film has so many different sort of themes, I feel, and one of those themes is the portrayal of Orthodox Jews in the media. I mean, there's the character of Moshe, the rabbi in Holy Lands, played by Tom Hollander. He's a very well-rounded character. And we get to see his strengths and we get to see his flaws. And previous guests have complained how often depiction of Orthodox Jews in the media is quite one-dimensional. Was the depiction of Jews in the media something you actively considered when writing this character?
I think you understand things afterwards. So I think I write more instinctively than really thinking like kind of politically when I write. It's just that I like my characters to be human, and being human means having flaws, and you are not a caricature. No one is. So um, I worked a lot with Tom, who's like one of like a wonderful actor, English actor. He went to for a week to see a rabbi that was living in Israel for 30 years just to understand how his accents changed, and he worked on it. So he was like really precise. We worked on building a character that would like look really true to people who could identify, and it was not something I knew perfectly. I mean, I didn't know any Orthodox rabbi close to me or my family, so I had to do some research. He went to the synagogue, he went to see how things were done. So yeah, we worked a lot to make the character credible, and meaning adding some flows was part of it.
Mm. Now the other, I feel like the other key character here is James Caan's character, the pig farmer, and of course James Caan's such a legendary Jewish actor. What was it like working with him?
It was super interesting because, like, first I must say when James Caan was like stepping foot on stage, like people were very impressed. Everyone was thinking about Sonny Corleone. It was like the Godfather was coming. So having the Godfather raising pigs in Israel was quite funny. And he it was impressive because like the other director he worked with were always as legendary as him. So I was I tried to hide my emotion, but he's a very specific actor, a very much working on the instant, like an actor studio way. So after the first day of shoot with James Caan, I rewrote most of his scenes because my scenes were
Wow.
kind of very literary, and I understood this is not the type of actor I had on my set, and I wanted him to feel real. So I rewrote almost everything, and he was quite happy. It was hard for the other actors, but then they understood and it made more sense. So there's a lot of of James in this character. It's like they met in the middle. It's not my character completely. It's my character and a part of what James Caan was really about.
Yeah, that sounds like such a collaborative experience, and that sort of brings me on to the next theme, which is sort of the relationship between characters of all different faiths. This film depicts Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Buddhists. To what extent do you think that promoting different points of view in film or theatre can help to promote tolerance towards different groups of people and combat discriminatory and prejudicial views like anti-Semitism in real life?
I mean, my mother was born Catholic. She converted to marry my dad. So I was spending half of my vacations at my grandmother's house, my grandparents' house in Bretagne, in France, where they were going to church. And the other part, I was in Israel with the rest of my family. And I was raised Jewish, but I was always facing the ideas that one family had on the other family. I had to explain to my Jewish family what it meant to be Catholic and the opposite. So, I mean, I felt that I've done that since I was a kid, finding ways to make them love each other, finding ways to make them understand each other and accept the differences. And it made me also laugh about religion quite early. As I said when we started this podcast, I am not a religious person, and still I feel Jewish. So it's a contradiction, but it's part of who I am. And I think there's as many ways to be religious as there's people. It's a very intimate thing that you build between yourself and your beliefs. And it shouldn't be something you impose on other people. And I think every time religion is kind of aggressive, we are out of the what is receivable. I just don't like religion to impose anything.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. Um, another really interesting sort of reoccurring thing in this film is this theme of understanding other people's perspectives. One cause of anti-Semitism is ignorance and a lack of understanding, or a lack of willingness to understand the thoughts and concerns of Jews. But in the film, there's this theme of family refusing to listen or engage, and putting this to Jews in real life. This is something that Jews have come up against and are still coming up against today, be it in politics, among friends, university campuses, or, like we say, family. When confronted with anti-Semitic rhetoric, what are some ways in which Jewish people can get the opposing side to listen? And when do you think it becomes a lost cause?
I must say, it fluctuates. Sometimes I feel it's anyway. It's been happening for centuries, and a story repeats itself. And what can we do? It's like, because there's no reason. It's absurd. Anti-Semitism is absurd. It's not like I'm arguing about an idea that has roots, and we can see both sides of the story. There's no side of the story, so it's very hard to argue when it's just pure hatred. uh, so the good thing is sometimes they hide anti-Semitism uh, under a rejection of Israel, and this is something where we can argue, and this is a good base to start with. But when it's pure anti-Semitism, like, it's already late. That's why I was thinking it's about education, because I just don't get this hate. So I mean, I feel that when you hate a group of people, it's just that you hate yourself. There's something wrong about you. So it's more about trying to avoid this type of situation, is trying to avoid crisis. Every time there's crisis, anti-Semitism raised because they need to find someone who's responsible for it, and it's always been Jews throughout centuries.
Mm, mm. And look, we all combat and fight anti-Semitism in different ways, and your way is through, well, like you say, is speaking to your son's friends directly, but you also do it through your art. How effective do you think art can be as a means of combating and dismantling anti-Semitic ideas and tropes?
Holy Land was very powerful. I'm thinking about the book because I remember when I was signing the book, and people were saying, "Oh, it's very far from my family. I don't even know any Jews." Like, but they were still buying the books. And when they came back after like my next book, I was signing, and they came telling me, like it looked exactly like my family. It's thought they thought it was very specific, but then they understood that like the family traumas, family and dramas, everything about a dysfunctional family works in every other family. It's not because they're Jewish that you cannot relate. And the fact that for a time, for 2 hours of reading, they identified as a Jewish family, I think helped for them to understand that there's no difference but the way we worship God, but the rest of it is just, a regular family like any other. So I think that making characters that are people you can identify to is really important. And I would say also, um, I sometimes tell audiences about the fact that there's a lot of Jewish people living um, in poverty. That there's a lot of poor people in France, for example, that cannot afford to even move to Israel, or move like I was lucky to do in the United States. And that at a point, what will they do? And they don't even know that some people, some Jewish people, don't have money. It's like such
Yeah.
an old anti-Semitic ideas. I think I read recently that 30% of French people think that all Jewish people are very rich and wealthy. So, like, fighting against that by showing, I think, characters that are in different situation is important. They have to like understand about it and just not fall into the cliche Jewish uh, guys that we see in every other movie. So I think this is a way to change things, and I felt it's relevant. And on another side, we were speaking about Le Vieux Juif Blonde, my first play that you said is studied at Harvard, like was played in a lot of different countries, and I made it's kind of my big hit, but still I'm trying to adapt it as a movie. Everyone says it's the best script I've ever written. I have attached like very strong French actors, and I cannot finance it. Not a single euro. I cannot get to finance it. And Holy Lands was supposed to be French at first, and I couldn't finance it. So I mean, they don't. There's a lack in France of curiosity for Jewish content, and almost a fear about it. And this is something dramatic.
Mm, most certainly. Your play, your hit, Le Vieux Juif Blonde. I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah.
Please, thank you. Tell the listeners, for those who aren't familiar, what is this play about? What is the crux of the play?
It's about a 20-year-old girl that is raised in a French Catholic family, and she says that she doesn't understand what she's doing here, and she's not a 20-year-old blonde Jewish girl, Catholic girl. Sorry, she's an old Jewish man that was a camp survivor and was in Auschwitz and is in this body and doesn't understand why. And it's in between, like everything I do, a comedy and a drama. So it speaks about this schizophrenia and about like how she expresses her pain and suffering by becoming in a fantasy this old Jewish survivor. But it's much more than that. It's a very strange play. It's a monologue, and it's really about how her mother at the end is able to say "dirty Jew" to her own daughter, and it's like how she she impersonates what creates hatred, and it's I think it's a very powerful text. It just escaped. It's not. I don't feel like I'm the writer anymore because it's been almost 20 years, and I didn't expect the play to receive such attention. When it started, I was in a very small theater with a wonderful actress, but at the time she wasn't famous, Mélanie Thierry. We had like 90 seats, and all of a sudden it became this phenomenon, and we were 2 weeks later in a 400 seats theater, and then 700 seats, and full for years. And yeah, it was such an experience because I think it was telling people about their own views about Judaism, how they could relate to the mother and the process that creates anti-Semitism. And it was very interesting. At the end, people were really coming out crying, hugging me. I didn't even understand how it created so much emotion, but it did. And it played for years and with different actresses. And yeah, it's one of, I just think you do this type of work just once in your life, you know.
Wow. How much do you think the success of the play was linked to the fact that France has an issue with anti-Semitism?
100% linked with that because as I said, for example, I couldn't put together Holy Land in France, and I moved it into an American movie, and it was easy for me to raise money. But Le Vieux Juif Blonde, I don't think could be shot anywhere else than in France because it's really speaking about this far right antisemitism that brought us to World War II, and it's necessary that it's done in France. It's something important, relevant, and that wouldn't make sense anywhere else. So I'm fighting to make this happen because it's 100% linked to that.
I really hope it does happen. I really want to see it. I want to ask you a question now, which I ask all of our guests. If someone who is not Jewish approaches you and says that they want to help in the fight against anti-Semitism, where should they start?
Oh, I mean, they should start by understanding what being Jewish means. And being Jewish is not only a religion, it means that you are responsible for people who could have been exterminated throughout the time. And it's kind of an archaeological responsibility. It's like we are a trace of humanity, of what we could create of best and worst. You know, like there's something about our people that is kind of a symbol of where the world is at a certain point. I think like the way a Jewish community is treated in a country says nothing about the Jewish community, but a lot about the health of the country.
Amanda, please tell the listeners, what have you got coming up and where can people find you?
Oh, to come and kill me. I'm just joking. uh, I don't know where they can find me because I'm always traveling. But I'm my last movie is called Promises. It's about to be released in several countries. But you can find Holy Lands in England, in the US. It's published at Bloomsbury, and my movie Holy Lands that you spoke a lot about is, I think, on Amazon, or you can find it in iTunes, anywhere. And yeah, I think it's a nice thing to share. Also, if some people ask themselves questions about Judaism, I think it's a nice way to understand things.
Yeah, I think so too. Amanda Sthers, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Against Antisemitism.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.